You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron. Now here's your host, Ethan Haristadoulou.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the Greeks Gridiron. And it is time again, and this is the second to last week we are doing this to make some picks for championship weekend of the NFL playoffs. We have 3 games left on the season, 2 of them being played this Sunday. As always, I'm going to make my predictions. I'll break down the games. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on both sides, who I think is going to win, a score prediction, all of that and more. So I invite you to do the same in that comment section down below. And as always, I do this for fun. I am no expert on anything. None of this is betting advice by any means. But starting with that very first matchup of Sunday, we have the AFC Championship between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. This one in Baltimore. Weather for it potentially going to be a little bit ugly. We're looking at somewhere around 40s and rain potentially. So definitely something worth keeping an eye on as we get closer and closer to this matchup here. We have 2 of the best, actually the 2 best, I should say, defenses in the league going head to head in terms of keeping points off the board. The Chiefs allowed just 17.3 points per game this season. That was second lowest in the NFL, second to only the Baltimore Ravens, who allowed a low 16.5 points per game. When you look at both these teams offensively, 2 very different teams. The Chiefs built on passing the football, going through Patrick Mahomes. They love to throw that football. They're 6th in the NFL in passing yards per game, sitting at about 246, whereas the Ravens, they're a run-first football team. Obviously, Lamar Jackson can throw the football, but he is one of the most elusive guys in the pocket and can make things happen with his legs. They are 1st in the NFL in rushing with about 156 yards per game on average. A big discrepancy, though, between these 2 teams here is going to be how much they've scored offensively. The Chiefs hanging around 21 to 22-ish points per game, but the Baltimore Ravens sitting at nearly 29 themselves points per game this season. They are one of the most dominant. There's a whole 7-point differential there between both these offenses and how many points they're getting on the board each game here. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. And I do have a big question mark and concern in regards to these 2 teams here. And that's going to be if the Chiefs are going to be able to slow down this rushing attack that Baltimore is able to employ. The Chiefs are ranked 18th in the NFL against the run, allowing about 113 yards per game. So if Baltimore gets rolling, it's going to be a long day. And whether that's with their running backs or if Lamar Jackson's doing his thing on the ground, he had a couple of rushing touchdowns last week. I believe, I can't remember if he crossed over 100 yards or not last week rushing, but I know he was at the very least close. So definitely something to keep an eye on here. Another thing I'll be watching very closely, and this is something that could be a very big difference maker, is going to be turnovers here. We have the Baltimore Ravens and their defense that led the league in takeaways with 31 on the year, and I don't think anyone is any stranger to the struggles that the Chiefs have had on offense. Granted, I don't think it's as bad as it was during the earlier portions of the season, but they are still good for like a turnover, it feels, a game. They do have 1 turnover in both their playoff games, 28 total on the year, which is the 9th most in the NFL. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. But Baltimore, they keep the football fairly secure. They had no turnovers last week. They have a plus 12 turnover differential in large part because of just how good they are at turning the football over on defense, but also because they're not one to really turn the football over and make too many mistakes with it. So ball security is definitely something worth watching. However, how I think this game really boils down is going to be who wins the war in the trenches. We have the 2 best teams in the NFL when it comes to wreaking havoc and getting to the quarterback. When you look at what the Chiefs did this season, sitting at 57 sacks and impressive numbers, the 2nd most in the NFL, second to only the Baltimore Ravens, who had a whopping 60 sacks on the season. Both of these teams can get after the quarterback. They can create havoc, force opposing teams into mistakes with the pressure that they bring. But when you flip things around and you look at it offensively, the Chiefs' offensive line, one of the best in the NFL, 2nd fewest in sacks allowed. They allowed only 28 sacks this season to the Ravens' 41. So there is a bit of a weakness there with Baltimore. You can get after Lamar Jackson, and if he can't escape the pocket, you should be able to bring him down. But keeping him contained is going to be of the utmost importance for that Kansas City Chiefs team. Now, as for who I think is going to come out in this game here, we've already kind of talked about a handful of things here, a lot to look at, a lot to consider between both of these teams here. Health, obviously something as well. Who's going to be active, who's going to be inactive, but we won't know the clear picture on that until a few more days from now. However, in Baltimore, rainy weather, which is the worst case scenario for a team like the Chiefs that has just been turnover prone this season in some situations. And I think that bad weather games are not going to be in their favor based off of their track record this year. I think I'm going to lean Baltimore. In my opinion, they have been the best in the NFL for quite some time, at the very least, since they took down the San Francisco 49ers, and arguably even longer than that, and some people just were refusing to see it or maybe quite didn't see it yet. I think the Ravens get the job done here in a big matchup against the Chiefs. Knock down their rivals. You get Lamar Jackson and the Ravens heading to the Super Bowl and representing the AFC. So give me Baltimore, 24-23, very tight contest. I'm not super certain on this one here, but I've been leaning Baltimore for quite some time now, and I just have a really hard time picking against them, especially with this opportunity that they have hosting the AFC Championship for the first time in such a long time. I'm going Ravens on this one. And then for the NFC Championship here, we have ourselves the Detroit Lions being hosted by the San Francisco 49ers over in Levi's Stadium. This game, completely different in terms of weather. Right now, the way things are looking, we're talking like 50s, maybe even a little bit warmer than that, potentially. Clear skies, no weather to really be concerned of. It should be a beautiful game for some January football in the NFL playoffs. Not something we get far too often, but when San Francisco's hosting it, you can bet on potentially having some good weather. When you look at the way these two teams match up, you have two very high-powered offenses going head-to-head here. When you look at the Lions, they're averaging 27 points per game this season, which is fifth best in the NFL. And then the 49ers averaging about 29 points per game, third best in the NFL. Both these teams can dump points on their opponents here. And it is also worth mentioning that both of these teams, in terms of yardage, are top 5 in both passing and rushing. So the defenses in this game are going to be busy. They're going to have a lot to take care of. They've got to make sure that they check all their boxes, mind their P's and Q's, because you cannot make a mistake against either one of these offenses. And that kind of brings me to my overarching point of this entire matchup here, is that this game, in my opinion, is probably going to be won and lost by one of these teams' defenses here. Both teams are great at stopping the run. They average below 90 yards per game rushing allowed, which is a really good number. We want to try to make opponents as much as one-dimensional as possible. However, both of these teams have shown that at times they can be susceptible to good passing teams. Now, when you look at the Lions, they, I believe, are 27th in the NFL right now in terms of yards per game allowed through the air. 49ers are about middle of the pack, somewhere around 14, 15, if I'm remembering correctly off the top of my head here. If either one of these teams have an issue with slowing down the passing attack, things can get a little bit ugly and very quickly. Both these teams have a tendency to be able to rip massive plays on you. An effective pass rush is going to be crucial in this one here. And we saw San Francisco struggle a bit. For a team that has so much invested on their defensive line right now, from Chase Young all the way to Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead and Javon Hargrave in between, I don't think we're getting quite as much pressure and as many sacks as we would like to see from this San Francisco 49ers front. But when you look at the flip side of things, Detroit, coming off even just their game last week against Tampa Bay, 11 pressures, 4 sacks, and that's to the 7 pressures that the 49ers were able to put all together last week. Not a single sack for them. I do think that is something that is going to be very important here. If you can't pressure Jared Goff, you can't force him into mistakes. And I do think that if you can bring that pressure, as good as Jared Goff has been, he can be duped into making a mistake or there. We have seen it a couple of times this season at the very minimum. When you look at kind of how he played against the Chicago Bears, I think that's a very good idea as to how you want to make things happen. You get to him and you get to him quickly, force him into some bad throws. It is certainly possible, but the question is, against one of the best offensive lines in the NFL in Detroit, can San Francisco do so? And the same question could be asked of the Detroit Lions to San Francisco. They have one of the better pass protecting offensive lines themselves. And on top of that, Brock Purdy does an excellent job getting the football out very quickly. Pressure and getting to the quarterback is going to be huge here. The last thing I do think that's worth mentioning here, though, is going to be health. I think health is going to be an even bigger factor in this game than it is going to be in the previous game we discussed here. When you look at the 49ers, obviously the big conversation right now is all around Deebo Samuel and his shoulder. Is he going to be able to play? How hurt is he actually? As far as I know, on Wednesday, he was seen running sprints. I don't know if anything's changed as far as practice goes today, but it is worth mentioning that Deebo Samuel potentially misses this game here. That is definitely something worth keeping an eye on. As for the Lions, I do think they have a far bigger concern as far as health goes than the 49ers do. When you look at Detroit right now, obviously Sam Laporta has been banged up for a while now. Center Frank Ragnow last week spraining both his knee and his ankle in that game against the Bucs, and you just lost offensive guard Jonah Jackson as well due to I believe a minor tear to his meniscus. He had to have surgery to repair that, but he's probably out for this game. I would be legitimately shocked if I see Jonah Jackson lining up for the Detroit Lions this weekend. With a lot of offensive line concerns going into this game here, it could be the door that opens things up for the 49ers to maybe bring some more of that pressure that they've been struggling to find and make things scary for Jared Goff. So all of that is definitely worth considering. Now, as for who I think comes out in this game here, last week, I went with all favorites. I only got burned on the final game of the weekend. The Chiefs ultimately upsetting and this is a weird way to put that, but they were the underdogs in that matchup here. The Chiefs upsetting the Buffalo Bills, even though it isn't that much of an upset in the grand scheme of things, but they were the underdogs. And this week, I think I'm going to do the same. When I look at the San Francisco 49ers and the situation that they are currently in right now, with all these health concerns in Detroit, they have a really good opportunity to disrupt what the Lions have done offensively. And part of their strength, honestly, the biggest strength that I think they have had this year, for as great as the play has been from Jared Goff and all the talent, the running backs, and I know, the Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery 1-2 punch you have going on over there. These are two of the best run defenses in the NFL. If you can slow that down, things get tricky. You have to rely on the pass. And if this offensive line is going to be as battered and bruised as it's looking like for Detroit, I'm a little bit worried about them, and it's forcing me to shy away from them. I do think the Lions should be able to still find some offensive success, albeit maybe not as much as they have throughout the entirety of this season, being one of the best offenses in the NFL. And I think the 49ers could get the job done. I do think that these offenses, like I said, could find some movement, could get some points on the board. Both these defenses are leaky, the Lions more so than the 49ers against the pass, but I do think that the Lions and 49ers get some yardage through the air, probably see a couple of passing touchdowns at minimum from both these teams here. That number gets pushed up high as far as final score total goes. I have 28-24 San Francisco to represent the NFC in the NFC Championship. But those are my picks for both of these games this weekend here. I'm taking Baltimore for the AFC. I'm taking San Francisco for the NFC. I've kind of been feeling like this for a really long time, and you know what? I might be wrong about one of these. I would not be shocked, but both of these teams are a number one seed for a reason. Baltimore, in my opinion, is the best team in the NFL right now, and the Chiefs are going to be the second best team at worst, third best behind maybe the San Francisco 49ers at this point, but I have a hard time betting against Baltimore. And then the way the 49ers are set up with all these injuries in Detroit, I'm just having a hard time leaning towards the Lions. I'm picking the 49ers, and I do think this is worth saying here. I'm picking the 49ers, but I am rooting for a Detroit Lions victory here. So while I want the 49ers to win for my pick's sake here, I am all in on Detroit making the Super Bowl, and I hope that they can prove me wrong. But like I said, those are my picks. That is it for me. As always, I greatly appreciate it. If you made it to the very end, I will see you all next time. Have a good one.